Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In this episode, we're going to be talking about calculations. Now, I'm getting ready for Alaska, and every time I prepare for a trip, I find myself making the same calculations. It's not the shutter speed, it's not the ISO, but calculations that determine which lens I pack. Now, you would think this is the best choice, but I have to know what it is that I'm getting myself into when preparing to shoot with a 2.8 lens at this length. These are things that most photographers never think about, and yet they make a huge difference in your photos. So with that, let's get started. If you are new to this channel, my name is Shannon, and I am a full-time photographer in beautiful British Columbia. Whether you're here to learn, be inspired, or simply enjoy some stunning visuals, you've come to the right place. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like this. Okay, so the first thing is heat haze. It doesn't matter how expensive your camera equipment is or how sharp your lens is, heat haze is going to destroy your images. Now, the only way to really avoid heat haze is by shooting in the early hours instead of in the afternoon or even in the evening. Even when it's cooled off a bit, you could still get that heat, especially off of rocks or any fields and stuff that really retain the heat. Now, I shoot a lot on the ocean. And for my eagle workshop, we're photographing eagles catching fish right above the surface of the water. And so you got cold ocean and warm air, and you get a lot of heat haze or atmospheric distortion that happens. And this makes your images really soft. So this is where having a really long telephoto lens could be a danger, because getting your subject really close to you might be great, but you might be clipping the wings, might be clipping the feet, the talons, whatever your subject is. You might not be able to fit it into your frame. So more than likely, you're photographing your subject a little bit further away. That's why I love bringing out my 400 prime. Not only is this lighter, which we'll talk about a bit later, but I can fit my subject in here perfectly at a nice length, a nice distance away from me that is not too far away to get all that atmospheric distortion or heat haze. And I can also follow it a lot easier. When I see the subject, when I bring this up, it's so much easier to find that subject in a 400 as opposed to a 600 or an 800 if you're out there on a boat. Okay, number two, how close are you to your subject? This is really important to know when you get to a location, whether it's Africa, Antarctica, or in my case, it's going to be Alaska. How close am I going to get to these brown bears? And they can get quite close. So I asked the lodge, I asked other friends and other photographers who have been there, photographed, and it's crazy. They all said that 400 is probably going to be your longest focal reach. And so Nikon sent me out this. It's the 400 2.8 with a built-in teleconverter. So if I needed that extra reach, I can pop that on. I also have a 70 to 200 because that's how close they get. Now, sometimes it depends on what it is that you're trying to capture. If it is a portrait or a headshot, well, that's going to change what gear you might bring to, in my case, Alaska. But if I want more of an environmental shot to get the landscape, the mountains in the background, I better be thinking about what lens I can have to capture all of that, especially if the bears are really close to me. Now, they said it could be within 30 feet, sometimes even closer. And so what is that distance? And that's the third thing that I want to talk about, which is the depth of field. Everyone always says, shoot wide open, so that gives you a faster shutter speed and a lower ISO. But I'm going to be bringing a 2.8 lens. So this can get me a lot of light, and my depth of field can be extremely shallow. So this is where I calculate what sort of distance do I have, how much is going to be in focus when I take those shots. So I like using photo pills. This is photo pills. There we go. They're not paying me to say this. In here, we have depth of field. And this is where we can calculate how much is going to be in focus when we focus on, say, the eyes of our subject. So we can put in our camera. I have a Nikon Z9. Then we can put in our focal length. So right here, I'm going to put in 400. Then I could put in 2.8, and if I'm 25 feet from our subject, I only have 2 inches to play with. So there's an inch before the eyes and an inch behind the eyes. So if I want the nose of the bear to be in focus and the ears, or any other part of the face, then I might have to stop down my f-stop to be able to get that. Now, we change our depth of field 3 different ways. We shallow our depth of field by controlling the aperture, so wide open aperture to let a lot of light in is gonna shorten that depth of field. If you have a longer lens, so telephoto lenses, the longer the lens, the shallower the depth of field you're gonna have. And then the last thing is how close you get. So the closer I get to my subject and what I'm shooting, it's going to have a shallower depth of field. So if we had a 600 f4, 600, and we put in an f4, now we are closing down our aperture, but with the 600 f4 at the same distance, we actually lose some of that in focus area. So you only have an inch. So an inch is so shallow. So you wouldn't want to photograph that grizzly or that brown bear that close to you. So even if we change the distance and we say 60 feet away, now we have 8 inches to play with. Now this is very important to do some calculations here, to know whether or not things are going to be in focus. For my eagle workshop, I want to be able to get the whole face of the eagle down through the body of feathers and the talons and the fish all in focus, or at least the eyes and the fish in focus. I don't like it if the fish is out of focus because there's so much cool detail there that I think really adds to the photo. So this is where I would put in my 400 lens. And if the eagles are, 50 feet away, and a lot of them are closer, you just have to be patient, this gives me a foot and 3 inches, so 15 inches that would be in focus. And for an eagle that's flying, and when it grabs a fish, that is all just in focus. So if I grab the eye, the fish is just within that reach. And it might even be outside of that if the eagle gets a little bit closer. So stopping down a tiny bit might be the best thing for you. Now at 600, and we try capturing that same eagle, we now only have 6 inches to play with. Well, what about if the eagle is further away, 75 feet? We fill that frame. We have 1 foot, 1 inch, and that still might be too narrow of a depth of field to be able to get that fish in with the eyes. And we have to also think about our subject detection, because the eagles might be far enough away that it doesn't pick up the eye or the head. It might pick up that contrast of that dark feather body. And so that might be just enough to be able to get the eyes in focus in the foreground and the fish in the background. Next, I want to talk about weight. This right here with my camera on the end for 8 hours on the back of a moving boat is going to put a lot of strain on my arms, my shoulders, back, and that could have long-lasting effect. So having a heavy lens is something to consider. With the brown bears, I'm hoping to bring a tripod or at least a monopod to be able to have that weight supported. All right, zoom lenses. I love zoom lenses for their flexibility, but they sometimes could have their downfalls. One, taking that time to zoom is a time missed. So if that eagle's coming down to catch that fish, and you're trying to zoom in to get as close as you can, the action might already be gone. Now for me, I'm a bit split. I like using zooms for video. I like pulling back, capturing some video, zooming in, getting some tighter shots. And I like environmental photographs where you have multiple eagles going after something. But if the landscape is quite wide open, or I got a lot of ocean, waves, and there's not really anything that's too interesting, it's more distracting, then I go with the prime. I have my distance that is sort of the sweet spot of where I hope an eagle would come down and grab a fish. This is where I'm locked, ready to go, and I'm used to it. I shoot nonstop with 400. I know exactly what to expect. I don't have to worry about zooming in, zooming out. I just look above my lens, find my subject, and then just hope that they're going to come into the frame closer and closer. Now, if they're far away, then they're too far away anyways for a good shot. Too much atmospheric distortion, heat haze. So I just be patient. I look through the lens, no, too far away, don't care. With zoom lenses, you can get into that trap of zooming right in to say 600, photographing some eagles that are going to be soft. Or you zoom out and you forget that you're zoomed out when you want to be more zoomed in. Now, if you're having a hard time getting some sharp photos, I got a free PDF that you can download. I'll put the link down in the description. And then I've got workshops. You can check that out on my website at mattshannon.ca/workshops. And I got a gear page. On my gear page, I've got all the links to what I use out in the field, and there's discount codes there. So be sure to check that out. Thank you so much for watching. Wish me luck in Alaska. And if you aren't subscribed, think about subscribing. Ciao.